Welcome to the Real Estate Pros Show, where we interview real estate investing professionals from coast to coast, as well as the service providers that serve the real estate investing industry. Our goal is simple: share what's working now to help you improve and scale your business to the next level and meet the pros that can help you get there. Real Estate Pros is powered by Investor Fuel, America's leader in helping real estate investors and professionals build the business you need to live the life you've always dreamed of. Let's start today's show. Property insurance for real estate investors doesn't have to be difficult, but it does need to be there to protect you when you need it. MyInvestorInsurance.com not only provides insurance at 15 to 30% cheaper than traditional agencies, it's built specifically for real estate investors like you. You can set up an account in about 2 minutes, get quotes on properties, turn on and turn off insurance for your fix and flip or rental properties in around 2 minutes without having to talk to anyone directly, all through our portal. There's no better way or faster way to make sure you've got the coverage you need to protect you, and no more lengthy policies either. Once you're set up, you're billed monthly and prorated by the day for however long your policy is active. It's powered by MSI, the third largest independent MGA, with 1.5 million customers and more than $1 billion in cumulative premiums written. Get set up today in about 2 minutes at myinvestorinsurance.com/fuel.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Brett McCullum, and I'm here today with Austin LaFever. And today we're going to be talking about going from military intelligence to real estate investing. All right, before we do, guys, at Investor Fuel, we help real estate investors, service providers, and real estate entrepreneurs to 5X their businesses and to allow them to build the business that they've always wanted and allow them to live the lives they've always dreamed of. Without further ado, guys, Austin, welcome to the show, man.
What's up?
Perfect, man. We talked for a while pre-show, man, getting to know each other a little bit, and I'm incredibly excited to do this episode with you. I know you've got a lot to unpack and share with us, and it's gonna be fun, man. So, tell us, man, catch us up to speed a little bit. Who's Austin LaFever? You know, how'd you get into real estate? Give us some back history, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how far back you want me to go. I'm just
Day
little
one.
by little. I don't know if I even remember that.
I know, right?
So actually, yeah, I think I got interested because my grandparents actually owned a bed and breakfast when I was a kid, and cool. I loved going there. It was just like, I grew up in Las Vegas, which is this like hustle and bustle city, and they lived out in the boonies, owned this little, piece of heaven, and, it was in the mountains of Utah. And I remember going there and just being able to ride four-wheelers when I was like 8 or 9. And there was like, I had all the freedom in the world. I was like, this is so cool.
That's the dream as a kid, man. Yeah.
And my grandma, which to this day at our bed and breakfast, we still make the exact same 7-Up pancakes with homemade apple cider syrup that she made. It was my all-time favorite breakfast. It is like the pancakes melt in your mouth. They're so good. And
you're gonna have to share that recipe, my friend, unless it's family secret. Then I guess I won't ask.
No, man. I'm one of those. I like to share, but I will say this though. It will never taste as good as it does at our bed and breakfast. For some reason, I've tried to make it like even, I have a house up north in northern Utah. I've tried to make it in Las Vegas. I don't know if it's the elevation. I don't know if it's like my grandma's spirit, I don't know. But dude, it tastes better at the bed and breakfast. So yeah, that was like my first exposure to kind of the real estate world. I mean, I didn't really know a lot about it, but at least I had a family member who kind of did something that was in real estate. So that was kind of cool growing up and coming for, family reunions, holidays. We'd come to the bed and breakfast, the whole family, everybody would have their own room,
I bet that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good time. So that was kind of, that was my first exposure, real life. The other thing I talked to you about before the show is I was one of those kids obsessed with Monopoly. I just, even though the game took, 6 to 8 hours or whatever to play, I was like, I'm in, let's go,
Yeah.
I would,
and I'm not going to lose. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And I even my family, we've played only a couple of times and they're like, Dad, you always win. I love the game, so.
Well, it's funny you say that because like I know we were talking about that a little bit, but like the mental fortitude to play a game that long
Stop living on an island and join the #1 mastermind in America for professional real estate investors. Investor Fuel is a community of hundreds of the nation's top investors working together to build stronger businesses and better lives. In addition to the amazing community of real estate investors acting as a board of advisors for one another, Investor Fuel members have access to 100% funding on purchase and repairs for our members only, a health insurance program, and benefits and discounts that more than pays for the membership of most of our members, meaning it's actually costing you money to not be a member of Investor Fuel. If you're looking to scale your business and build a business that allows you to live the life of your dreams, please visit investorfuel.com today and book a call with our team.
Especially
as a kid, and to have that objective, like, I have to imagine, I mean, you know how it is, like, Austin, how old are your kids, by the way?
So let's see, my youngest is 8. It's 8, 10, 12, 14.
Yeah. So I know as a kid, like, at those pre-adolescent years coming in, that's the formative times, you know, of our minds.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever you want to, I'm not, but I would imagine that probably created some patterns in your mind, even early on, you know.
I think so.
Now that you're an adult, you know, and you can like, oh yeah, maybe I did, you know. That's really cool.
Well, you know what's funny is, like, my mom, she even says it today. She's like, Austin, I don't know what happened to you, because of our, you know, there were 3 kids, right? I have an older brother and a younger sister. And she's like, of the kids, you are by far the laziest. And she's like,
thanks, Mom.
But as an adult, I mean, you are by far the most ambitious, the most driven, the most, you know, entrepreneurial. And so she's like, I don't know exactly what clicked for you. She's like, I will say this, though. There were a few things as a kid that really did motivate you. And she's like, it was really only 3. Food. She's like, girls and money.
Tracks, yes.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, it really hasn't changed much. Just the stakes have gotten higher. Like,
right.
I have a wife and 3 daughters, right?
Yep.
And a son. And then, you know, I love food. You know, I told you I love to cook, bake, all the things. And I'm definitely a foodie. And then, I love making money. I love the challenge of just creating something that's going to cash flow. You know, that for some reason that just, you know, gets the motivation, the juices flowing. So,
yeah. So, all right. What year would you give or take? Because I know we talked, kind of gave a military intelligence, you know, is what we're going to talk about that a little bit. Like, did you enter into the military right out of high school? Did you go out? Like, when was that like?
No. So, it was kind of just, so right out of high school, I actually went and served a 2-year mission for my church, and I actually went to the former Yugoslavia. And so I spoke Croatian, and I learned that language, which is it's like the 3rd most difficult language in Europe to learn. Behind Hungarian and Finnish. Those are the other 2 that are very, very challenging. And then when I got back, it was 2008. And I got married. My wife and I were, you know, we were poor. I was going to college. She had finished beauty school. So she was kind of the breadwinner. She was the one bringing home the bacon while I was doing school. I still worked, you know, part-time at the Buckle at the mall, you know, selling clothes. But I was doing, you know, 16, 17 credit hours. So it was like time and a half that I was trying to just get college done as fast as possible. And then 2008, the crash happened, and my wife, they basically handed her a notice, said, hey, we're closing our doors tomorrow. You're out of the job, you know? And that was our main income. I was an ambassador for the college I was going to, so I'd help with like recruiting, and that was part of my scholarship. And I ended up being at some, you know, event where there was an Army recruiter, and he was like, hey, have you ever thought about the military? And I was like, I mean, even as a kid, I felt that at some point I would be in a military position. I don't know why. I feel like I've always had sort of a forward thinking or just like a gut feeling about very big things in my life. I don't know where that comes from, but
If you're looking for consistent, high-quality leads, look no further than Investor Machine. Investor Machine isn't just another agency. It's the most sophisticated, data-driven lead generation company on the planet for real estate investors, and serves the role of being not just a lead generator for your business, but a marketing partner that is helping you achieve your goals along the way. Go to investormachine.com to learn more and schedule a call with our team today.
I told them not really, but I was willing to listen. So I went and talked to them, I took their little test, the ASVAB test, which tells you, what jobs you qualify for. And they're like, hey man, you can have any job you want. Like, you scored very well. So whatever you want, it's open.
They told me I peel potatoes, by the way.
Well, then I went to first I called my mom, and my mom was like, no, I don't want my son, going to put his life on the line, this and that. I'm definitely her baby, Then she called back and she's like, hey, I know you talked to the Army, but our neighbor has been in the Air Force for 27 years. He said to go talk to the Air Force. They're more family friendly. And, you could find a position that wasn't as dangerous, And so I was like, okay, Mom, I'll go talk to the Air Force. Well, the Air Force was in need of linguists and intelligence professionals. I already spoke multiple languages. I spoke Croatian. I could understand Serbian, most of Bosnian, because they're very similar. They're all Slavic based, and they're actually about 50% the same as Russian as well. So, if you learn one, it's very easy to transition into another one of those languages. Well, I signed up with the Air Force. They were like, yeah, we're going to make you a multiple linguist type, whatever. Well, I wanted to focus on, Yugoslavian languages. So Serbian, Bosnian, Croatian, because that's where I felt most comfortable. And they were like, hey, these jobs aren't coming up. We're moving into the Middle East. This was during Operation Enduring Freedom. And so it was all like, Urdu and Arabic, they wanted the Middle Eastern dialects and the languages going on in the Middle East. And so my wife and I, though, like I said, she had lost her job. Our checking account was down to I think it was like $110, we were broke. And I just said, look, just whatever intel positions are open, let me know. I'm ready to go because we need to get paid. And then I had found out my wife was pregnant. We didn't have insurance. So I was like, oh shoot, we need to find insurance because we're about to, she needs to get checkups and whatever else. Actually, I want to say something though. This is something that I think the new generation doesn't always understand. And I don't know if you went through this, but I feel like our age group usually goes through this. We were very, very poor. I mean, very poor. Now, it was 2008. Obviously the crash was a big impact, but we were scrappy, when my wife lost her job, I called my cousin. I was like, hey man, I know you work at the local car wash detailing place. Do they have any openings? He's like, yeah, I could probably get you a job. So then I was working, Buckle. I was detailing cars on the weekends. I would literally after hours go and clean out the vacuum pipes to get quarters to take my wife to the Dollar Theater and then share a meal at fast food. That's how we had dates. It was, but I was cleaning, literally this was disgusting. All the stuff you vacuum in people's cars, pet hair, human hair, skin. I mean, it was nasty. And I'm cleaning quarters to, quarters, nickel, dimes to try and pay for these little dates,
Well, I think it's important. I'm glad you said that because I think it's important that we never lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Because the reality is we're not promised tomorrow. We're not promised anything. And tomorrow, anything could happen in the world. You probably have enough knowledge in your mind to know something could happen tomorrow that shuts things off. And we're back to that.
And I guess the lessons I learned was I became extremely resourceful very early on. I became a problem solver. And I really think that's what that's the real foundation of investing, is you're a problem solver. And really, it's the foundation of almost any entrepreneurial spirit or any entrepreneurial endeavor, is having resourcefulness to solve problems for people, you know?
If you're a new or newer real estate investor looking to launch or grow your real estate investing business, please check out Investor Fuel Club. It's a coaching community, but unlike anything you've ever seen before. And you can actually partner with members of our mastermind from coast to coast on deals right in your market. There's no better opportunity to build a consistent business than to literally partner with pros to help you avoid costly mistakes, avoid the need for capital to do deals, and help you eliminate your fears as you're starting your business. Learn more about Investor Fuel Club at investorfuel.com/club.
In fact, this is a little segue, but yesterday, my general manager that runs all my properties, he called me up. He's like, hey, man, our cleaner, she kind of bailed because she wanted to go watch her daughter play basketball for state. And so we have, it was like 12 rooms that needed to be cleaned. And I was like, all right, I'm in. You know, I jumped in. I was cleaning rooms, you know, and it's like, guys, I've owned this for, this is my 6th year as an owner. It's like, I will still go to those introductory positions. And what's funny is I got in there and I was like, you know what? We're missing stuff. I noticed there were like some gnats that like dead, little flies on the ceiling. I'm like, dude, what is that? That is disgusting. Why is that not being clean? You know, like, and I had a list of things like, hey, these are things that are being missed. Had I not been in there cleaning the rooms myself, and then I was using the vacuum, I was like, dude, this vacuum freaking sucks. Like in a bad way. Like I guess it doesn't suck, right?
Yeah.
But I was like, we need to get a new vacuum. Like, I can't believe the cleaners have put up with this for this long, you know? Anyway, back to my story. My wife and I started very humbly, like I said, ended up, went and interviewed with the Air Force, and dude, he knew what he was doing. Here we are, poor, starving college students. He took us to Chili's, and that's where he did his recruitment, was at Chili's. He's like, guys, order whatever you want. Anything you want, order it, you know? And so we did. We ordered appetizers, we ordered steak, we got dessert, you know? Man, I was like, sweet.
Chili's circa 08, 09, man.
Man.
Bring it back. That was the time right there, yeah.
Back then, it slapped. It was real, you know?
Yep.
Anyway, so he's like, look, if you sign and this and that, and we did. And then, like I said, I ended up taking it was a different intel position. I mean, intelligence analysis is basically what it was. And, that's kind of the beginning of the story right there. And, for the next 10 years, I was, working different missions. I worked missions in the Middle East, in, Asia, South America. We did counter drug for 6 years. And then finally they said, hey, if you're, I did a couple tours overseas, and they were like, hey, look, if you're going to continue, you're going to deploy for a year every 3rd year moving forward until retirement, which is, that, and I had already missed, plenty of time with my wife and kids. And between training and deployments, it was like, look, man, I was like, I think I want to try something else, And originally I actually, I applied for pre-med at BYU. That's how I ended up in Utah. And I got into their pre-med program. And my wife got pregnant with number 4 while I was doing that. And I remember sitting in class, I had just taken a test and I got like a 79 and I was stoked. I was like, yes, I didn't even have time to study, and I was able to get it. And then there's this kid next to me and he was crying, literally crying, because he got an 89% instead of a 90. And I'm like, you guys have no idea what the world is about. Like, no idea. And it was kind of at that point, my wife and I actually went on a date. And, I was doing, again, 60, 70 hours at school. I was working 30, 40 hours a week. And so I was not home, and she's there pregnant, we already have 3 kids. She's pregnant. And I was like, this is our life for the next, 12 years. Because after pre-med, it's med school. And then you have, your apprenticeship or whatever. And then if I want specialty school, which I was planning to be an orthopedic surgeon, that's what I want to do. I love sports medicine, and she says she didn't say this, but I think she did. And I don't know the exact words, but she's like, I'm pretty sure we will get a divorce. And
Wow.
and I was, well, because it was just so stressful. I mean,
Sure it
it was
was.
terrible.
Yeah.
Like I was never home. She was not sleeping. She's dealing with, 3 kids right now under 5. 3 kids under 5. I mean, that's no joke. Yeah, I mean, you got 4 kids too.
Yeah.
And so I changed. Like that day, I was like, okay, I guess we're going a different route. And that's when I got into, sales and a few other things, a few other positions. And then, eventually ended up at Brand Makers, which is where I was selling swag. I told you about that before the show.
Yeah. Yeah. And you told, so I want to kind of, we're at least going to touch on the brand thing, because
Sure.
that was interesting. And then I do want to get into kind of on the real estate side with how were you able to kind of use some of the military intelligence background
Yeah.
into that. Okay. But on the sales side of it beforehand, it wasn't like you were selling like, I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's swag and so it's cool, but it's not like this like massively sexy thing that everybody in the world needs, like boom, and you found yourself at the top of that, right? Is that kind of like what happened?
I don't know if I'd say the top. I mean, there's some guys that have been there for, but by the time I got there, there were guys that were there like 8 or 10 years, and they were selling, 2-3 million in a year, which is great though, because it gave me something to shoot for. It like planted the seed of possibility. It's like, oh, those guys are doing it. And I wouldn't say they're any smarter, more disciplined than I am. So why can't I do it? Those first couple of years though, I'll tell you what the difference really is. And this goes back to any business, someone has to spearhead the company. And they create a culture either by design or by default. So if you create a culture by design, you're going to be able to create it exactly the way you want people to have a mentality, a drive, that sort of thing. But if you don't, it's just left to wherever the chips will fall, and that's not a good business model,
Yeah.
So we have a CEO, his name is James. And I remember many things right when I started that just completely shifted my mindset on what it means to be a leader. Now, I had just spent many years in the military with many highly qualified leaders, right? But they have a different way of doing things, right? It's very disciplinary. It's very much in your face, talking about boot camp or basic training. It's very much like you suck, you're terrible, you're all these things, and they nitpick and they white glove inspect everything you clean, everything you do. And James wasn't that way. I almost didn't know how to handle the fact that he didn't yell at me. Like I didn't know how that worked,
Right.
And I think it was probably my second day of training, and we're in the conference room, and he stands up on the table in the conference room, and he's like, "Austin, I need you to know something." I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Your life is going to suck for at least 2 years. It's going to suck. It's going to be terrible. You're going to hate it. You're going to want to throw in the towel. But I'll tell you this, if you stick with me for at least 2 years, I'll show you how to make more money than you've ever made in your entire life. But you have to stick with me for at least 2 years." And he's like, "But I'm telling you, it's going to be horrible. And you're going to go through so much, and you're going to hate it because you're going to be on the phone so much. That phone's going to give you cauliflower ear as if you're in a fight." And I was like, okay. But that kind of real talk changed me forever.
Or it was belief at the end of the day.
Well,
like, you know what?
He gave me instead of saying like, "Here's the goal to sell this much," he's like, "Look, I'm not going to tell you how much you're going to sell, but I need you to be in this for at least 2 years and give it everything you got, and you will make more than you ever have." I'm telling you, that first year, I made more than I had ever had. It was tough. It was terrible because they don't give you leads. They don't give you, it's not like they hand you people to call. You're literally a 1099. You eat what you kill, so you have to be on the hunt every day. And so when he told me that, I was like, well, I'm going to try and do it in less than 2 years. Like that was my mentality. I was like, well, if he tells me it takes 2 years, I'm going to try and do it in 1 or maybe 1.5, and, man, I was on the phone. I would literally at night, I'd come home from work. My wife and I would, turn on Netflix or whatever, I'd be on my computer looking at prospects to call the next day and making a list of 50 to 100 prospects of companies that I could call the next day. So every day I came in, I was ready. I had a list of people to call, and I actually broke the company record for most calls made in a month. It was like almost
Wow.
2,000 calls in a month, which is just, it's insane, right? Like,
Yeah. And that's a drive, man, that like, you know, that's an innate quality that you carry. And that's, I'm glad you talked about it, because that obviously we know in the real estate world, you know, leads are like the marketing, the leads are the lifeblood of the business. Like we can't buy a property without having somebody to talk to, you know what I mean? I have to imagine, this might be a nice segue. That was a discipline that you created. That did you carry any of that over into real estate?
yeah, I think for me, I just didn't, I almost love it when people tell me something's like not possible, you know. It's like this idea of mission impossible, you know. You're like, I think I could make that work, you know. I think I'm resourceful enough that I could find a way to solve that problem, you know. And again, some of the analysis I did was on companies. It's like, okay, if I want to sell this much, I don't want to go to companies that have 30 employees. That means they're only ordering 30 shirts. But if I go to companies that have 300 employees and more, that means their minimum order for employee shirts, that's 300 shirts, you know? Well, whatever it is I'm selling, there's a lot more there. And so I would definitely I would Google and analyze all these companies that were, you know, larger or had more personnel or had more, you know, opportunities to give stuff away, that sort of thing. And it just got to the point where, I mean, I was just, some of my orders they started out being like $1,000, $2,000. And then they jumped to like $20,000, $30,000. And then I was getting orders that were $80,000, $90,000, $100,000, like one order, because I was going after specific companies that I knew they had the budget, they had the personnel, and they weren't going to sweat. They weren't going to sweat about the cost, you know? Like this isn't actually my client, but one of the clients that one of the partners of the company has is Intuit. Intuit owns TurboTax. They do all the payment, you know, processing. They own multiple things now, you know. They spend $3 million a year on swag. Just them. Think about it. Think how much money they make on payment processing, on TurboTax, on all of these things they have, and they're all software based. So there's really not a lot of overhead for them, you know? So where is their overhead? It's spending money on their employees, you know? Anyway, yeah. So there's a lot that's transitioned. And I think at time, like I loved that job. Like, and I honestly, I'm still affiliated with them. I still have a team that produces, like I'm still, you know, I have a team that basically sells for me now. And I still get involved maybe 15, 20% of the time. You know, but, and yeah, I mean, it's still another stream of income for me that's consistent, you know?
All right. Well, speaking of streams of income, what are things like, so you got started in real estate, we talked to kind of pre-show, you're in more of the buy and hold space, like cash flow style. What is it looking like today for you? What are you doing?
So I actually took a kind of an analysis of the market. I didn't realize this when I started. Okay. So I bought my first property December 2019. There's a problem with that. 2 months later, COVID hit and they shut down vacations for the entire world. So I was a little panicked. We had, you know, taken some equity out of our home for the down payment, you know, kind of leveraged it that way. I used my income from brand makers to pay for the remodel. I did all the work myself on that first property. It was, you know, it was kind of crazy. It was a 6-bedroom, 7-bath bed and breakfast. And I mean, we did the entire thing, you know, the whole thing got remodeled. It basically got stripped down to, you know, the bare bones. And then we did it all new, you know? And when COVID hit, I was like, man, I don't know. We might end up moving into this bed and breakfast. This is gonna be our new family home, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if they're going to turn the lights back on for vacations or whatever. Luckily, about 3 months into the pandemic, after the shutdown, they were like, all right, look, you can leave your house, but if you are going to leave, go to low populated areas, you know, out into nature, get out into open air spaces. We're in a town of 500 people. This is like a low density population as you can get. And the bookings just went through the roof because people were so stir crazy. And
Yeah, for sure.
And so we actually almost broke even in year one, which was COVID 2020.
Yeah, that's a blessing right there. All right, so you have that going, COVID year, and then we talked a little bit, like, how many units do you own now? How many doors do you own now?
We have 28 doors, 28 units that we rent out. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing, bro. That's incredible.
Yeah.
What in the future, like, well, let me ask you this. We talked about it. Like, how are you using because we're talking about creative finance a little bit in your military intelligence background. So you've grown to 28 doors out of this thing, and that's like no small feat. How did you do that? Like, what did that, like, bring that a little bit together for us?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, I really only knew the traditional financing way, going to the bank or to a lender. That's all I knew. And this property that I'm in right now, this is a house and then 5 rental units built on the back of it. It used to be a bed and breakfast. And then we basically remodeled the house portion for my family. And then we rent out all 5 of these rooms. They pay my mortgage, and then they make us about 15 grand a month. Wow. In the summer. The winter months are not, we have a seasonality to us. But anyway, after this though, I was like, man, I need to find a way to not use traditional financing because it's just getting too hard to qualify. They make it extremely difficult, pretty much since 2008, and they wrote all those bad loans. They've made it a lot harder for investors to qualify for, large sums of money because it's risky, or it can be risky. So then I started learning about, assumption of loans and, seller financing and all these creative ways to finance deals. Well, shortly after I bought this one, a lady in town came to me and she's like, hey, I want to sell my 10 log cabins. She had these 10 log cabins. They're just mini, kind of tiny home cabins. And I was like, well, what do you want to sell them for? She's like, I want to sell them for 1.6 million. And I was like, oh. Up to that point, the largest deal I had done was 720,000. That was the largest I had done. And I was like, this is more than double that. And I was like, you know what? I know these are profitable. I've run the numbers. I've done the analysis. I'll figure it out. I'm going to figure it out, And she, not only that, she wanted 25% down, because which is $400K, that's no joke. So I worked the deal. I actually found a couple partners, leveraged some of the other properties we had to get some equity out, that sort of thing. And we were able to get those 10 cabins seller financed 15 years at 4% interest.
Wow.
Which is crazy for seller finance. Like, 4% interest. And I was like, you know what, though? These people in these small towns, they just want to know that they're going to be taken care of. She was trying to retire. She's a single lady in her 60s.
Right.
She wants to be, and so now she gets a check for like $9,000 every month for the next 15 years. Plus she got 400,000 down to go buy a new home and move closer to her kids and grandkids, So after that experience, I was like, man, this is actually a really good way. And you can negotiate anything. Like, everything's negotiable, And so that's what kind of, I think that Intel side of me started saying, okay, now I need to take the skill set that I learned in intelligence, which was, we learned a lot of skills about human psychology, how to, get information from people. And, some people say it's like manipulative, but if you really look at it at its core, it's about proper communication.
That part.
Yeah. It's learning what the language is of the person you're speaking to, what matters to them. And then if you can give them what matters to them, they'll help you. They will work with you, kind of a pro tip that I give, even the guys that are in my community. I tell them, I'm like, a lot of people think the best way to get on someone's good graces is to serve them, to do a good deed for them, right? Like something simple,
Mm-hmm.
In human psychology, it's actually a greater bond to ask another individual for help. To ask of them to do you a favor. And that seems like counterintuitive, right, to the way we
No,
think.
I'm that tracks. I'm with you.
But think about this. When someone calls you and asks you for help or a favor, it basically tells you you're a good person, you're trustworthy, and all the good things about you, someone else is recognizing that and recognizing you for the good person you are. Therefore, you all of a sudden feel bonded to them in trust because they trust you with their vulnerability. Isn't that crazy? Like
That
it,
track.
it
I
does
love it.
track. Yeah, it does track. So when you go into a negotiation, and I'll share a story real quick about the last hotel we bought that we did seller finance, and the guy was like zero chance for seller finance, because apparently he had like dealt with it for a year and got, I don't know, something didn't, anyway, he had a bad experience. But okay, have you ever done carpentry work, like woodwork?
I mean,
The rule,
you don't want me
okay.
to do it though.
Well, the first rule, right? Measure twice, cut once. That's the first rule you learn is like, hey, you can't, if you cut after one measurement and you realize you got the measurement wrong, you're screwed. You got to go buy more wood. It's the same thing in communication. In communicating with people, you listen twice, you speak once. So it should be a 2-to-1 ratio when you're trying to negotiate a deal. It's 2-to-1. Now, I'm not saying that's all the time, and by listen twice, speak once, what I'm saying is you listen to hear everything, then you repeat what the person said and make sure that you're understanding exactly what they were saying. And then it's your turn to speak from your mind, your heart. So don't be a lot of people will try to preemptively find their response before someone has even finished their thought or their idea. And that's normal, right? That's human nature. I think it's a social construct that we have. But when you're in a negotiation setting, shut that off. Shut it off and try to listen twice as much as you normally would. Okay.
I love that.
All right. Now go to the story. So we get this deal. It's a small boutique hotel, but it does about $200,000 in revenue a year at about a 50% profitability. That is a fantastic deal, right?
Yeah.
So we go into the negotiation. My general manager is the one that actually brought me the deal because it was connected to his ex-wife's family or something. Somehow he got wind of it. And he's like, dude, he is not down. I've asked him about seller finance. He is not even on board to even listen to it. I was like, well, would he at least have like a 15, 20-minute conversation with me? He's like, yeah, we can set up a call. I was like, okay, perfect. So here's what I did is I said, all right, why are you selling this property? He said, well, my brother's actually, he's a general contractor. He's doing a development up north. He asked me if I want to invest with him, and this is the only way I could do that, but I'd like to kind of go invest with him on this housing development. Excellent. I wrote that down. Wants to invest in housing development with his brother. And I said, well, how soon do you want to do that? He's like, well, it's probably going to be a couple of years before we actually do that because my youngest is still in high school and we want to make sure she graduates with her friends. She still has, I think it was 2.5 years left. And so he's like, I don't really want to sell it right away because then I have to pay capital gains and I can't do a 1031 exchange. He was like, I have a lot of things. So he's like, it is kind of a challenge. I was like, okay, daughter wants to, finish high school. So 2.5, 3 years. Yeah. Okay. So now the story about this. So I got a call from my general manager. He tells me that he's got a deal for us. It's a boutique hotel. And what's funny is, I had told him, I was like, hey man, we just finished buying cabins and some other stuff. Like I don't have money for another deal, but he's like, no, I think this would be a really good one. It's going to cash flow, whatever. I was like, okay. The guy did not want to do seller finance. He had been burned or had a bad experience. And so I just said to Gabe, I was like, well, at least we could have a conversation with him. So I sat him down, we were on a phone call or a Zoom or something. I'm trying to remember now, but basically I asked him some very just basic questions. So number one, why are you selling? Like, what is it that you want to get out of this?
So he said no, but then you still got him to take a meeting anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, look, I want to go invest in this housing development with my brother, who's a builder. I said, okay. So I wrote that down. He wants to go invest with his brother. And I said, what's your timeline for selling this? And he's like, well, my daughter's still in high school. She has a couple more years. I don't want to, pull her out of school, but we would probably move, once this is sold. And I said, okay, so he doesn't want to leave yet, but he does want to sell. Like, and I think part of it, his wife had been managing it and cleaning and doing all the things. And so she was just done. She was like, I'm out. Like, this is exhausting. I'm tired. I think they were kind of on the verge of just wanting to be retired. Their youngest kid is about to graduate high school in a couple of years, and they didn't want to keep doing it. And so then I asked them what price they wanted. I was like, well, what are you trying to sell this for? And they gave me the price. So I wrote that down. And then I can't remember what the other two questions were, but then I again, talking about listen twice. And so I just went through, I was like, okay, so you want to go invest with your brother. That's why you're selling this property. You need X amount of dollars to go invest with him for this development. You want to do it in the next 2 or 3 years when your daughter has graduated high school. So you don't necessarily want to do it just yet because you want to do a 1031 exchange so you can avoid the taxes. Okay. And then I said, okay, so you want this amount. And he did have, I think he put the interest at the same or higher than what he was at, is what he told me. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, there was a few other questions, but I just kind of was like, all right, here's what I could do. I was like, I can give you exactly the amount you're asking for. I can do it as a lease to own so that you don't have to start that time clock on your 1031 exchange. We can cover all the taxes, all the things. We will be running it starting the time we sign. We're taking over. We're running everything, but it's a lease to own. And we're going to do it at this amount. I will give you the price you're asking for. I only need help on this one. I said, can you help me? I need a 3% interest rate. Otherwise the numbers don't work and we have to walk away.
Can you help me? Remember?
Yeah. I said, can you help me? I was like, that's the one thing I need your help on this. I can do these with you. I got you on all of these. This one, I need you to help me out. And he was like, oh, can you at least meet me in the middle at 4? I was like, I'm sorry, but the numbers, even at 4%, the numbers don't work at the price you're asking for. And I said, I can get you the price you're asking for. And he was like, you know what? Yeah, that's not a deal breaker. Let's do it. And he signed the deal right there.
20 minutes prior to that, he's a hard no.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's using exactly what you said. And that's tactics and things that you learn, principles from military intelligence of like how to listen properly.
Yeah. Well, just to analyze the situation,
more how
read
to communicate
the room
properly, even, right?
Right. Well, because even a lot of things, and this is something that I talk about in my community. I don't know if you know this, but you can read people's faces. I'm not saying the facial expressions. Yes, there are nonverbals like facial expressions, but like your skull structure. I don't know if you know this, but the way your eyelids look, the way your eyebrows are set up, the way your forehead, does it slope? Is it rounded? All of that means something. And people don't, I guess a lot of people don't understand this, but like people with a more rounded face or rounded skull structure, they care less about facts, figures, and numbers. They want to know more about backstory, feelings, emotions. They want to know what the real story and feel behind something is. So like if I meet somebody with a more rounded skull structure, I know they don't give a crap if it cash flows 17% over 5 years, blah, blah, like blah, 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 blah. They want to know, well, this was my grandparents' place and it meant so much to me as a kid. And I know that I can make it successful. I just need this, this, and this. And they're like, oh, that's the sweetest thing I've ever heard. It's like, and like some people say that's manipulative, but I don't know. I'm communicating what's important to them. Right. And that is a level of emotional and social intelligence, And Absolutely. So that's what I try to teach guys. It's like, okay, so I had a student the other day. This will be my last story. I know we're long already, but he went and tried to seller finance. He jumped right in and said, hey, this is what I could do. He's like, I can do 20,000 down. I can do this much at this interest, blah, blah, blah. And the guy shot it down cold. And I said to him, I was like, man, did you even like ask him any questions about what he wanted or what he was trying to do with this deal? And he's like, no. I was like, think how you would feel stepping into his shoes and someone just comes at you and you're like, well, this is what I want. Dude, those walls of defense, they're up immediately. Right. Yep. It really is kind of basic, and what's crazy is sometimes children do this naturally.
Oh, yes.
Think how many questions children ask.
Yep.
Because they genuinely want to know. And we start to lose that as we grow older, and, we become a little more selfish. It's just natural. You become a little more self-absorbed, and, it's kind of the way life works when you have to take care of this, that, and the other. But anyway, that's kind of my approach. And again, the other thing that I've invested that a lot of people don't is tertiary markets. I go after these small town, rural markets, kind of redneck markets, that I kind of call them the market of misfit toys, like,
there's still value there, Austin.
There's a lot of value there. You just gotta, you gotta do the analysis and maybe look at some of the outliers that most people don't look at.
That's right.
And, it can really pay out. Like I said, we're averaging, around 30% profit margin on all of our properties.
Wow.
That's
incredible.
Well, and it's because in tertiary markets, properties are just undervalued, usually by 15 to 25%. They're undervalued from a city, a secondary, or a primary market. And so that's where I've dug in and just mined, I'm just mining.
And you're doing it. Yeah. And you told me kind of pre-show too that, you have a goal of hitting, what's next? Like what's that looking like?
Yeah. I mean, we want to double, at least in the next, couple of years, if possible. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's possible. For us right now, the real challenge with a tertiary market has nothing to do with the real estate itself. It's the staff, the employees. And so right now we've been on a hunt for getting our next, I guess, layer of employees where it's like, hey, okay, now we're ready to grow. I tried to grow in the future by just being like, oh, we'll find people. It's a lot harder than you think. And you live and die by the people that work with you, So.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, guys, like Austin said, we are running a little bit over, but man, what an amazing story, Austin, of like starting to know here we are and using, it's a testament to the things that happen to us. They happen for us, and everything that you've walked through and been through has led to where you are today. And man, what an incredible story. So, if people want to reach out to you, Austin, learn more about you, what's the best way for that to happen?
So I have a Instagram page. It's called Warrior Ethos Life. You can find me there. On TikTok, it's Warrior Real Estate, and then just Austin LaFever on Facebook.
Perfect. Yeah, guys, if you don't take him, go follow immediately, because like what you're doing is incredible, man, and you're somebody worth following, definitely. So,
well, I love helping people. So if they need help, I mean, at least give me a chance to hop on a call for 10, 15 minutes.
There you go. Well, Austin, man, it's been great. Guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you guys on the next one. Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us for today's Real Estate Pros Show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing for your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. If you're interested in joining us as a guest of this show, please visit investorfuel.com/pros to apply. You can also check the show notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next show.